Hello everybody, this is Kyra with my Porch Prints tutorials, and today we are going to be working on a Valentine's inspired chocolate box sort of project. And we're going to be using just this basic box that I had left over. I know you guys probably won't have the exact same one, but any box that you might have left over from Christmas would work just fine. And then we're just going to take some of these romantic maps papers to cover the entire thing. And I went ahead and tore off some of the stickers that were on the box just in case they affected the way the paper glued down. And then taking this first paper with these pretty roses on it, I'm just going to cut it in half. And then I'm going to be tearing these papers sort of in a diagonal pattern, just starting from the corner and going up. And then taking this pretty paper here with this map of America on it, we're going to turn that over and just sort of trace around the lid of the box to make sure that we have it the right size. And then go ahead and cut that out. And a reminder to save all of your scraps. You'll probably end up using most of them to cover up all the little edges on your box. And then using this distress ink, just going around the edge of that paper. And links for the distress ink will be down in the description box below. And just go ahead and glue or tape this down, just like that. And while I was working on this project, I kind of was just making things up as I went along. I really didn't have any plans, so I ended up sort of flipping it over and starting on the bottom, even though I wasn't quite done with the cover because I wasn't sure where I wanted to go with the cover. So I decided to just sort of mentally take a break from that and work on the bottom instead. And your box is probably not going to be the same size or style of box that mine is. I'm just kind of giving you guys an idea of the papers I used and the patterns I used them in, but ultimately they probably won't look identical, so feel free to go ahead and skip this part if you would rather just sort of see the final decorating of the cover and the making of the little cluster candy cups that we end up putting inside this. But if you want to keep watching and kind of just see how I decorated most of this, that's fine too. And I didn't measure anything at all. I sort of just eyeballed it and used sort of a squeeze and fold kind of method to gauge where I needed to cut things. I'm not a real big fan of measurements. I'm just never been very good at math and things like that, so I kind of just tend to eyeball it, and it's sort of a messy process, but it usually turns out fine in the end, so I'm not complaining. And for me, I did have some areas that were a little bit rough just because of the shapes of the box. So here I'm taking this little scrap that is a bit of cardstock, and I'm just going to punch a hole out of it and then go ahead and punch it again to make sort of a half circle and use it to sort of cover up any of those messy areas I have in this hole on the bottom of the box. just like that. And it just makes it look a little cleaner. But again, it's okay if this is a little bit messy. Again, we're kind of going for like that distressed vintage junk journal aesthetic here, so it's okay if your edges are a little torn or showing or something like that. Don't panic. This probably took me longer than it's going to take most of you. I am notorious for being terrible at like wrapping boxes. Like, it's a joke in my family about how every year they know which presents are for me just because of how terribly I wrap them. I think it's mostly because I get kind of impatient. I don't know about anybody else, but like by the time I'm on, halfway done with wrapping presents, I just start kind of like squeezing the paper and taping it down and praying that it'll stay shut, and just not very good at trying to make things look pretty. I just kind of lose patience. But I was trying with this one, so that's why it was taking me quite a while. I think this took me a couple of hours to cover all of the edges. You can see I'm finally moving on to the cover here, just adding a couple of those torn corners and some lace. And I found that like doing these strips to cover up the edges works best. You'll see a little bit later on here, I end up trying to do, again, I got impatient and tried to cover like the entire bottom side of the lid in one whole piece, and it was actually way more difficult than just going strip by strip. So I would recommend just kind of covering things up piece by piece and taking your time with it. Here you can see me using some of those leftover scraps I had. Scraps were saving my life because, again, I didn't really measure, so there were occasions where the paper didn't quite cover up all of the box, and that's when I would take just a little scrap and sort of hide those mistakes, and you can't really tell in the end. And here's where I tried to do the entire piece, and I accidentally moved the box before I was done sketching around it, so I was kind of off with my measurements, and then it took me forever to sort of like fold it and cut all the extra strips off and glue it down. So I would not recommend doing this unless you have like a really steady hand and you're good with measurements. For me, I just kind of ended up having to take way more time doing this than I think it would have taken if I had just cut singular pieces to cover up all of those. But it worked out okay, and then again going in with another half sheet, just tearing it and going around the edges with some distress ink. And gluing it down, because I also didn't necessarily love the one piece look since I used so many scraps all over the box. I wanted it to still have that sort of like collage effect, so I'm just going to go ahead and tape this down over that piece to sort of keep with the theme. Just like that. Again, covering up this little strip here since I could see the box and it was bothering me. Covering it with a scrap, going in with the bone folder to sort of crease, make sure the box can fold close easily, and then adding a small piece of pink lace, the same one that we used on the like top cover of the box. And now that that's done, I decided to go in with a heavy hand and use some of that darker sort of reddish pink distress ink and go along all of the edges and creases as well as inside the box. Going with a really heavy stain here. And there you go. This is what it should look like when it is finished. Now we're going to go ahead and jump into the My Porch picks for this week. We had a lot of really pretty submissions, so remember, if you want to see your project featured in a My Porch Prints video, to join our Facebook group and share pictures of your project using My Porch Prints prints and the hashtag MyPorchPics, and we will go ahead and select them and add them to our video. All right, jumping back in here, we have two little freebie labels that come with this project, so make sure you go to our Facebook group to download those. And picking between the two, I decided to go with the white one, and going in with that Victorian Velvet Distress ink, we're just going around those edges softly, like that. And then if you haven't already, make sure to check out the Valentine clusters video where we make 8 different clusters that we will be using in this project. And here you can see I grabbed 4 of the bigger ones that we made, and we're just going to be gluing all of these down to the cover, starting with that freebie label right in the center. And then adding the rest of these around the edge of the box. You can put them wherever you like. This is just how I sort of decided to do my decorating. And I'll be using a mixture of the clear gel tacky glue and the Fabri-Tac glue, just because I find that for some of the fabric elements it sort of helps hold it down better, especially when it comes to this little like rose cluster we have. And again, we don't have a link for these rose clusters, but if you just Google mulberry paper flowers or mini paper rose bouquet, you'll be able to find similar items in like an assortment of colors and styles, and sort of pick whichever ones you like best. Then to finish it off, I'm just adding this big button up here in the blank space, and a couple of these little pearl stick-ons. And there you go, that is the cover done. Cute little cluster Valentine's box. And for the inside, I'm going to be using these Reynolds Kitchen pastel, like, I don't know what you call cupcake cups. And they're just sort of made out of paper. And grabbing 4 of those, we're going to be placing them inside the box, and then adding our smaller clusters that we made. We're going to just put those right inside the cups. And again, you don't have to use your clusters. You could put chocolate or candy or buttons or whatever you want inside of these. It's just kind of like a cute Valentine gift idea that you could give to somebody that you care about who likes to craft. Or if you want to put candy in there, you know, it could be for anybody who likes candy. So that is going to finish up our video for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed crafting with me, and we will see you in the next video. Bye!